All right, so today we're going to be building a NYC health inspection app using SwiftUI and NYC OpenData. So right now we're basically on the NYC OpenData website, and I'll add the link in the description. But basically, this is basically a data set where we can get information about health inspections for restaurants in New York City. So, and this is just like a quick about description, but I'll show you the data because that's really what you want to see. So when you get here, you will probably be on the about section first. Just hit data, and now you will get like a preview of what your data will look like. So you can see that there's some CAAMIS. That's pretty much like an ID for the restaurant, and then the name of the business, DBA, the location, see Brooklyn, and then the street and a bunch of other information. So we can get like the reason why they might have violated, like, or the health inspection reason for the violation. So it might be some with the food or whatever. And if you're not sure what some of these columns are, all you have to do is go back to about and then just scroll down. And then like here, you'll see it says DBA this is the field that represents the name of the business. So basically, we're going to be using this data to build our SwiftUI app. So what we're going to do now is we want to see how the API looks. So just hit actions here, and then you're going to see the API button. And then just go right here, hit copy. And then let's just open another browser, and then we'll just paste this here. And now you basically see that data that we have here. So we are going to build an app using this API. So let's get to it. So the first thing we're going to do is open Xcode, and then we're going to hit create a new project. Make sure you're on iOS, and then select app here, then next, and then we're just going to give our app a name. Let's just call it health inspections. And you don't have to set anything here for team. For organization identifier, you can just put like com dot and then your name or whatever you want to call it. And then for the interface, make sure this is set to SwiftUI because that's what we're using. And then for language, make sure this is set to Swift. And then for these, testing system and storage, set these to none. We'll handle testing in another video. And then just hit next here. It's just going to tell you where you want to save it. Just hit create. And then I'm going to maximize our Xcode a bit. And you're going to see this preview with some, just like some boilerplate code. We're not going to use this. So basically you can get rid of this. So let's just copy this. And I'll zoom, I don't think I need to zoom in. So I'll just start by typing in a navigation stack first. And then I'm going to add a V stack in here. The navigation stack, like this right here, it makes it that like you can add like a kind of title to your app. I'm gonna give you an example, a quick example. So you see the V stack right here, that makes it that everything you add in will go from top to bottom, anything in here. But let me show you the title first. So let's go down here, and then we're gonna type something called navigation title, and then hit enter, and it's gonna ask for some type of text, like what do you want the title of the screen to be? And then for us, we're just going to make it health inspection. And then if you look at the preview, you automatically see it. And then remember I was saying inside the V stack, everything that you add in here will go from top going down to bottom. I'm going to give you a quick example. So just write text here. Then I'll be like food. Instead of preview loaded. And then right below that, I'll add text, and then I'll say drinks. And now you see that. So you get the idea. So really what we're going to be doing though, we want to create a list. We want to create an app with a list of all the health inspection information. So we want to show all this data of all the restaurants, their health inspections inside our app. So to do that, we're going to jump back here, and we're going to start by typing in something called a list. And you know, that's what I love about SwiftUI. They make it that it's kind of, I wanna show a list of stuff, so I literally just type in lists. I like that they give it that those type of names. And then inside lists, we're gonna start by creating like a basic view of what we want our app to look like. So for each list, the first thing we're gonna want is say probably the name of the business. So we'll say that name of business here. And I'll hide the preview for now, just so we have some space so you can see as I type. So I'll hit canvas there. And then right below, like the name of the business, I'm thinking that we could have, say, the address of the business. Put like address business. Because most businesses might be a franchise and there might be different different franchises all over with different health inspection information. Let's just put that right below it. So this is looking good right here. But one thing I want to do is, another thing that you can have is we might have something like, so if we jump back to the API and you see this right here, but you might have a parameter, a value that says like whether it's American food, Jamaican food, Spanish food. So how we can find this is by looking for cuisine description. Now, we didn't see this at the top first. That's because not all records have certain parameters, but I'll show you how to handle that later. So we see something like Indian right there, right? Let's just jump back Xcode. What we're gonna do is we're gonna put all of this inside another VStack. Sounds confusing, but I'm gonna explain it in a second. So let's just cut this, so Command X for a second. We're gonna put our main VStack here, and then we're gonna put this here. And I'm gonna show you my canvas so you can see what it's looking like right now. And I'll hide this section too, so we have more space. Let's just make this run, and you see we have the name of business here and the address of business. We're gonna fill this out with real data in a second. Just be patient. All right, now what I'm thinking is, next to this like name of business, it would be fun if we could have like, say, the type of food that's served here, whether, as I said, whether it's Jamaican or American. So we want to make this horizontally across. So we have to do something called an H stack here. And then I'm going to grab back this V stack, plop it in here, and I'm going to put a spacer here. And then I'm going to add some text here, and I'm going to make this be, let's make it Jamaican. Jamaican food. Cool. And now one thing I'm noticing right off the bat here is that like the name and the address right here is not properly aligned. If we can zoom in a bit. So you see how the name is like far off. Don't really like that, but we can fix that really easy. So this name and name of address, name of business and address of business is pretty much this VStack. So all we have to do is add a parameter. So we're just to fix the alignment. So we say alignment. We'll just set that to leading. And then you'll see that the preview automatically fix that. The other thing is, I don't want the name, the type of business to be in the middle. I want it to be at the top. So it's only across because this is inside an H stack. Huh? So let's add some space there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fix it and make sure that Jamaican, the type of food, is at the top right here, so it's aligned properly. Do that again. All we have to do is add an alignment parameter, and then we're just going to say top. Not easy, not straightforward, not no crazy mathematics or anything like that. And now a couple other things that I feel like we might need is, so right below address of business, we could have like, what is the actual problem that is business, or what is the health inspection violation? So what we're gonna do for that is, so I'm gonna close this up for a second, and to do that, all I'm gonna hit is Command Option and then left click, and so it kind of folds. And then right below this, so below this right here, I'm gonna have someone that says text, and then I'm gonna say violation, health inspection violation, health inspection violation, right there. And you see right now it's at the center, which is not what we want. We want it to be aligned properly. We want it to be over here, right? So to fix that, you might have guessed it, just in this VStack, we add another parameter. And again, it's going to be alignment.leading. And you're going to see it kind of shifts over to the left right there. Oh, one more other thing that we want to change is I want a bit of space between health inspection and address of business. So to do that, we're going to add something called a padding. A padding is just saying like, yo, we're going to give it some space. So right under our H stack, right, we're going to add something called padding. And then we're going to say bottom. Let's see how much space it gives it. That looks like a okay amount of space. So let's just leave that for now. And then the last thing that we're gonna add, the two last things, we want to know the address, like what date was this health inspection done? Like, is it a recent thing? Is it an old thing? Whatever. So now let's add like some type of divider here. And then right below that, we're gonna have something like the date. So we'll select March the 3rd, 2025. Cool. And one other thing that I do want to do is I kind of want to push this to the right side. So a couple ways where you can do this, but I'll show you this way. I'll say like frame, and I'll say max width, right? Set this to infinity, and then I'll add an alignment to this, and I'll add the alignment as trailing. And now you're gonna see that March 3rd gets pushed over to the right. There's a couple ways how we could do this. We could have just added inside a H stack and then add a spacer, but I love this way. It's much cleaner and it's easier to follow. So now we have a basic idea of how we want the data to be presented, like how we want our app to show each health inspection for different restaurants. So now let's see if we can start setting up our service to actually get that data from the API. So let's just hide this for a second. Let's just hide canvas. And then we're going to open up this other side. And then we're going to create a new folder here. So we're going to right click or double tap. That's what I did. And then I'll hit new group. And then in here, I'm just going to hit, call this services. Or you can call it API services, whichever works for you better. And then inside here, I'm going to add a new file. So what I like to do is just literally just press Command N so I can add a new file. So just a Command N. And then you'll see Swift files with all of these. Make sure you just click Swift file and then hit next. And then inside here, I'll just call this health inspection services. Inspection services. And it creates a file, call that. Now, the first thing we're going to do is create a protocol. And I'll just show you what that is so you can follow along. So we start by saying protocol. And this might, if you're not used to this, don't worry, I'm going to explain all of it. So protocol, and then we'll call this health inspection services. And then hit that. And then basically a protocol is like, it gives you like an idea of what something can do. Like it gives it a certain types of abilities, if that helps. And the abilities that we wanted to have is that basically a function, a way how we can get the health inspection data. So we'll start by adding a requirement for a function. We're going to call it fetch health inspection data, right? And because we're going to use Swift concurrency, which is Apple's new way of handling like API requests, we have to add a couple more things. So we have to add something called async. And because it can throw, we have to mark it with throws. Nice. So boom. So now we have a blueprint of how to get the data. One more thing is we're going to have to create something called a model. And a model is what we're going to use to represent our data that we get from the API. So we're going to create another folder. We're going to pause. We're going to come back to services, but let's hold for a second. We're going to go back over here. We're going to hit right click or double tap again. And then we're going to create new folder. And then in here, I'm going to create a folder called models. And then again, Command N, click Swift file. And then in here, just call the file models. So let's press a little space here. And then we're going to start by typing in struct. And we're going to say health inspection model. So basically, you see these other keywords. So basically, we're creating a way how we can hold the data in our app. It's more complicated than that, but that's like the simplified version. So what I mean is, if we go back to the API, right, you can see that it's all this information. But so we need a way how to hold that information or hold that information and use it in our app. That's why we have to create a model to represent it. So basically, I'll minimize this, put this to the side here, put this to the side here. And basically what we're going to do is look at this and realize what parameters from the API do we want to add to use inside our app. So the first one is a really good one would be DBA, because we need to know what the name of the business is. So we'll start by adding in that one. So we'll say select DBA, and you see that the type is a string. Actually, all of them are strings right now. So we'll say DBA string. And then let's look at another parameter. So I remember we already built out our view, so we know what we need. So if we go back to content view, we know we need basically the name of the business, the address of the business. So let's just see where address of business is. It's literally just called street. So let's jump back to our model. And then we're going to add something else for that called street. And it's a string as well. So if we go back to our view again, the next thing that we need is the type of cuisine. So if we look on, one thing I want to point out, let me maximize this. If we look on this first one, you'll see that we don't see type of cuisine. We don't know if it's American, Indian, or anything. We don't know what kind of food is it, or Italian. We don't know. And the reason for that is because this is such an old data set that some of the values, some of the original values aren't in every record. So you can see that this one is inspection date was in 1900. So basically they weren't checking for like the type of cuisine back then. But if let me change this. If I do a quick find, Command F, and I type in cuisine by cuisine description, is that in here? You'll see that there are 667 records up here that have this. So I know that some of them will have it, but others won't. And the name of it is cuisine description right here. So let's minimize that again. And then we're going to go back here and jump to our model. And we're going to say like, let cuisine description, and we're going to make this a string. And remember, this isn't always available. And in Swift, whenever a value is not, it could be there or could not be there, we'll usually label this as optional. So to do that, all we have to do is, instead of just doing a regular string, we'll just put a question sign in front of it, which means this value could or could not be there. Another thing you might have noticed is that like they're using snake case. The snake case is pretty much like whenever like you're creating a variable and you use this underscore to represent like two different words. I don't use snake case. And most people don't use snake case. They use like camel case. So even though that's how the API is doing it, we're actually going to stick with camel case. And I'm going to show you a way how you can convert snake case to camel case with the code without doing any extra work. So stick around. Now, the next property that we need is the type of violation and the date that it happened. So let's minimize this again, and we'll go back to our API. And the violation, so this is violation description. So let's just copy this. And I believe this is one of those that isn't always available. You see, only 634 records have this. And this has way more than 634 records. So we know right off the bat that this is going to be an optional value too. So let's go back here and we'll say let violation description string, and we mark it with a question sign to show that it's an optional value. And again, this is snake case, and we don't use snake case, so let's just change this to camel case. Now, the last thing that it had was the violation date. Let's look at where that parameter is, our inspection date. Let's go with that. So you see it says here inspection date, right? So let's just copy that. And actually, this is a string too. But I'm going to show you a quick way how to handle this and transform it. And you see how it looks right here? Like it's all this information, 20 whatever hyphen. Obviously, you don't want to see that. We want to see it as March the 3rd or whenever. So it's easy for us to understand. I'll show you how to fix that. So let's just copy inspection date for now. And date. And usually this should be here, but I've seen cases where this isn't always there, which is very weird. So I would say we can make this possibly optional. Let's just make it optional for now. So we'll make this optional. So now basically, let's maximize this. We have a model that represents our data that we want to get from the API. So we could fill out everything. If you feel like, yo, you want the building, you want the zip code, you want the phone, you can do that. But for now, we're just gonna grab this certain amount of data from the API. So now our model is set. We're gonna jump back to our services. So we'll go back to services. And remember, we're creating this function, right? That is supposed to get the health inspection data, and it's asynchronous and it can throw. Now we want it to return a collection or array of our models. So to do that, we just hit that return, and then we'll just say health inspection model like that. Boom. Nice. And now, so basically we have a function that is asynchronous that can throw an error. But if it doesn't throw an error, we'll return us an array of pretty much that data from the API that are from parameters we chose. Cool. So now the next step that we're going to do is add a class here. We're going to say health inspection. We could just say services implementation, so I'll say impl. And then I'll have this conform to health inspection services, or basically get the abilities of health inspection services. But you're going to see a quick error here, and that's saying that, like, yo, if you conform to health inspection services, you must add the function that required of it. And the function that's required is the one that we just created, this right here. And if we look on the error right here, right, you'll see it even say type health inspection services impl does not conform to protocol health inspection services. You can do a quick thing and just hit fix here, and it adds a function. Let's get rid of some of the space, add some space right here. So now this is looking good. I'm going to hide this side so we can focus on here, since we're going to be doing a lot of work in the services right now. So get ready. So the first thing we kind of want to do now is, if we jump to our browser, and let's just maximize this again, you'll see that whenever we go to this endpoint or URL, this is how we get the data that we want, right? To see all this stuff. So basically, I need you to copy this, and we're going to use this inside our app. So we copy that, Command C, and then we jump back over here. And then above our function, inside our class, we're going to create something called a variable called let endpoint string equal this, right? And I like to make this private, since nobody really needs to use this outside of the class. So we can just make it private and lock it in here. And now the first thing we have to do, so ignore this error message for now. We're going to handle that in a second. So the first thing we want to do is convert this string or endpoint string to an actual URL type. So to do that, we're going to say something like guard let URL. And then we're going to type in URL and then parentheses, and make sure you look for the one that takes in a string. So this one right here. And then we're going to drop in endpoint, which is this that we just created. And then we're going to add something else that says else. And you might be thinking like, oh, I'm using a guard, so I'm about to return. Wrong. I want to throw an error if this happens. So say we are not able to convert this string right here to a URL, I want to throw an error. So to do that, all we're going to do is basically we have to create our own custom errors to handle this. So the next thing we're going to do is pause right there, and we're going to scroll up here, and we're going to create a enum. So it's a enum, and we're going to say health inspection services service error, and then we are going to make it conform to an error type. All right, and now basically whatever error cases that we want to handle, or types of errors that we want to handle, we're going to add them here. And we're going to add them by saying like case, and then I'm going to say boom, URL error, because I'm trying to convert it from a string to a URL. And if that doesn't happen, then I want to cause an error, right? So to do that, we say throw, and then we say health. Scroll up a bit. So to do that, we say throw, and then we say health inspection service error, and then we just have it throw a URL error. And the reason we're making it throw is because remember we added throws here as how we would handle if errors happen. Like we're gonna try this, and if it doesn't work, we wanna cause an error. So now we can go to the next step. But you might be like, yo, why am I still seeing this error here, this warning or thing right here? It's because basically it's saying like, yo, you said that you're gonna return an array of health inspection model, but you're not doing it yet. And the reason why we're not doing it yet is because we have some more work to do. So to just shut it up, what we're gonna do is just have it return an empty array for now. And then we're gonna make this much more. So, you know what I mean? All right, so now the next thing we're gonna do is basically, if we get past this portion without throwing an error, what we want to do is start seeing if we can get the data. So to do this, we have to do something like URL session dot shared dot data task, and make sure you look for the one that is async, not this one, async and throws. So this one right here. And then remember, it's requesting a URL, and we have a URL. Remember, we made one. And if you're not sure what the type of variable is, just option click on the variable. You see pop up URL. So we'll say URL here. And now you'll see that we see a bunch of errors right now. So the first one is saying, well, call can throw, but it's not marked with a try. So any call, anything that we're trying to do that can throw an error, and whenever you're trying to call it, you have to make sure you mark it with a try. And that's, it kind of read like it, like if we try to do this, all right, it doesn't work, do something else. So we have to mark it. So we could say try here, and it's gonna ask me again about one more error. So it's saying, well, you say this function is asynchronous. It's the asynchronous function here. And this call is also asynchronous too. So basically it's happening in the background. But you're not marking it with a wait. So we don't know that we should wait until we get this call. And you can see the warning kind of gives us, it literally says insert await. But we're not going to rely on that. We're actually going to type it out because that's how you kind of remember it better. So we're going to put try await here. And one thing that happens all the time, is that people will mix up this. So some people put await at the front and try at the other end, and some people and other people too. And now you will see a different error saying result of the call is unused. And what that's saying is basically this gives us a value. Well, actually, it's one value, but it has two things in it that we want. But we're not putting it inside a variable. And if you're not sure if something returns something, you can just option click on it again. So we'll option click on data. And you'll see that right here, it says async throws, and it returns a tuple with data and URL response. You know what I mean? So good. So let's just add that's data that we need in here. So we'll say let, and then remember it's a tuple. So we'll say data response, and then we'll say equal. Now you see that warning disappears. And if we look at the types, you'll see that this is data, and this is actually a response, a URL response right here. Just like how the function said it would be, a data type and a URL response. Now, one thing I want to highly recommend that you do is that whenever you're doing this, as I said, it's try. And as I said, it's a case where this could work or it couldn't work. But you got to think about what if it doesn't work, which would be the error case, right? To handle that, we have to do something called a do catch. And you pretty much all the time, whenever you're seeing try, it's more than likely you're going to have to put it in a do catch. So we're going to copy this real quick and then cut it, Command X. And then we're going to type do here. We'll scroll up some more. And then we'll say catch. And then inside the do block right here, we're just gonna paste that back with Command V. So basically we're gonna try to do this work. And then if it doesn't happen, you're gonna hit this catch block right here. So for now, let's just do something like print error, right? And what's happening here, you notice I didn't create an error variable. As long as you're inside a catch block, you automatically get an error variable, because that's the only time you're going to be in a catch block if you think about it. Only if something goes wrong, so there's an error. So for now, we're just going to print it. We're going to do some more work here later on, but let's just jump back to the main course meet. Nice. So let's scroll up a bit more. And then right here it says try await. All right, cool. So what we're going to do now is we have the data and we have the response, but we need to make sure that the response was good, like it's a valid response. It's a 200 or 2099 or whatever. If you see a 404, that's an error. That's an error response. You don't want that. Or a 500, you know, it's an error response. So to check that response is correct, we have to convert it from, I remember the type is option click. It's a URL response. So to convert it, we're going to say something like guard, let HTTP URL response. And then we're going to say equal response. And we're going to try to cast this as something else, as the HTTP URL response type. And then we'll say else here, and then do this. So basically, remember, response option click on it to see the type is a URL response, and which is this right here. And I'm trying to cast it as a HTTP URL response, right? And if you look at this, you'll see that's what I'm trying to do. And the reason why I'm trying to do this is because this type right here is the only way how we can get like the status code to find out if it's a valid one, if it's a 200, or if it's a failure as a 400 or 500. Now, again, inside our else block here, you can see that you might be thinking, oh, he's gonna return. Wrong again. Since we're throwing errors, we have to create a new error case for this. So we'll scroll up here, and then we'll say case, and then we'll call this HTTP URL error, right? And then we scroll back down. And then inside here, we're just going to say throw, and then we're going to say health inspection service error, and then HTTP URL response error. So if we're not able to cast this response as a HTTP URL response, then we're going to throw an error, this one right here. So that's looking good. So now the next thing that we're going to do is finally check the status code. So the good status codes, like, yo, the API worked fine, we're able to get the data, is going to be like between 200 and 299. So we can say something like, again, guard. And the reason I'm doing guard is if guard doesn't work, like it's saying like, yo, if you're not able to do this stuff right here, don't go any further down in the code. You know what I mean? So anyway, so guard, and then remember valid status code 200 to 299. And we're going to check if our status code that we got from HTTP URL response is between 200 and 299. So say HTTP URL response, that's status code. And then we'll say else. I remember, you might have got it now. We're not going to return just like that. We're actually going to throw an error. So we have to update our error case and handle this. So we'll say case status code error. Code error. And then in here, as usual, we're going to throw this error. So we'll say throw health inspection service error. That's status code error. Nice. So good. So now we know, once we get to this point, we know that our response is valid. Everything is good. Now what we need to do is handle the data, which is the real main course meal for services. So how to do this right now, right? Right now, if we look at the type, remember, option click on data or whatever type, you see that it's a data type, but that's not what we want. we want an array of health inspection model, which is what we're using to represent our data. So what we're going to do now, let's scroll up. We're going to use something called a JSON decoder to kind of transform that data type to a health inspection model array. So we'll say let, and we're just going to call this JSON decoder. And I'll say JSON decoder right here. So now this is our JSON decoder. This is what we're going to use to transform that data type. And then right here, to scroll up a bit more, we're going to now say JSON decoder dot decode type from, right? So basically this is saying, yo, I want to transform, decode, basically transform the data that we have. So this right here, and see it's telling you what type it accepts. So again, I'm tired, I want you to get used to this. So option click on it and you see that this is a data type. So this pops fine right here. So it's a data. And then basically in here, we have to put what type, what do we want to transform it to? What do we want to transform this data to? I remember we want to transform it to this array of health inspection right here. So we just scroll back up, grab that, copy that, and then we paste this here. And one important piece to remember, well, it's actually two, but the first one is whenever you're saying that you want it to be this type or something to be type, you say dot self right here. You have to put that. And now the second thing that I wanted to mention is that you're gonna see an error here. Like it's saying, basically, it's literally telling you what it is. It says class JSON decoder requires that health inspection model conform to decodable. All that's basically saying, yo, is that if you want to use a JSON decoder to transform stuff, transform some data to some type, you have to make it that whatever I'm transforming has the ability, what's it called? Decodable. See? Or basically conforms to that protocol called decodable. So we can fix that mad easy. So if we jump back to our models folder, right? Our models file, you can see that we have our model right here. Now, remember, we need to make it conform to our protocol. And to do that, all we have to do is just hit this. And then the name of the protocol was decodable. So it's a decodable here. And then if we jump back to our services, you'll see that this error, that original error is gone, but we still see a new error. And again, this one is saying it's related to try. We worked to try before. So basically it's saying this might not work. This might fail. So we need a way how to handle it. So we could just say try here, right? And now the next thing it's saying is the result of call is unused. So basically, if it after it transforms that data, you're not using it. So we have to add a variable so that we can use it. So let's just add some space here. We'll say let inspections equal this. And now, whenever we transform it using this, it's going to be stored in inspection. So naturally, this inspections type should be of this type, health inspections array. So let's just check it. Again, how do we check it? Option click on the variable. So we say option click, and you see it is the same thing. Health inspection model right here, health inspection model right there. So this is pretty much what we want. So this will look good. So now what we need to do now is return it. So remember our function returns an array of health inspection models. So let's just do this. So boom, and we'll just say return inspections. Nice. So now that is pretty much handled for that part. And we can get rid of this fake part right here where we're just returning an empty array just to get rid of the old errors. And now we're gonna see one error right here saying still missing this. And the reason for this is you might be thinking like, oh, but you're already returning it right here. So what's the problem? The problem is this catch block right here. So remember, we can either return the array or throw an error. That's what the function is expecting. So we need to add another case to handle in this scenario. So basically we could scroll up here again, and we could say something like case, or we could say unknown error. right? And since it's unknown, usually the system will be able to give us some more information. So what we're gonna do is do parentheses here, do something like error message, and just do string, right? And then when we scroll down here, just gonna say throw. Remember, we have to throw error. I'm gonna say health inspection service error. That unknown error, and you can see that we can pass in some type of error here. And remember, as long as you're in a catch block, you're gonna have that error variable that you can use. Because that if you're in the catch block, that means some error occurred, you know? So in here, we're just gonna say error. See, we have access to it. And because this is expecting a string, we can use something called the localized description. Basically, some description that the system is going to give us in as a string. So now if we scroll back up, you can see that there are no errors in our service layer. And now we can get to basically start using our services. So now the next piece right here, and that was the chef's kiss, the beautiful part. So the next thing that we're going to do right here, if we look back at our view, remember, we want to be able to get that data to show inside our view. So to do that, we have to create one other thing called a view model. And this is basically what's going to be used to use the services to get the data and then give that data that it got back to the view. So we're going to create one more folder. We're going to call this view model. Let's say a new folder. Let's call this view model. And then inside here, we're going to hit Command N, Swift file. And then I'm going to say health inspection view model, right? And then go inside here, by typing in health inspection view model. Lovely that I auto completed that. And now we have a class that is pretty much what we're going to use the service. So we have to introduce the first thing, next we have to introduce a service for this view model. So we'll start, we're going to say by saying let services, and then for this type that is going to be, we're going to make this health inspection services. One thing to note here is to ignore this error for a second. I am not using, so if I go back to services, I'm not using this class. I'm using the protocol type. And the reason for that is because it's going to help with writing unit tests, which is what we're going to do in a later video. So that's why we're going to do this. And trust me, if you're building apps, you got to be able to write unit tests. There's no way to avoid it. So stick around and I'll explain it so it's mad easier. Anyways, back to the view model. So yeah, jump back to the view model and we're going to go here and then we're going to add the initializer. And I love this autocomplete for initializer. So basically, as you start typing in any or in it, you're going to see this kind of pop up and you can just hit enter and it fills out our initializer for us. So that's looking good. So now inside our view model, basically we want a function that uses this services to get the data, right? So all we're going to do is start by typing in func, excuse me, and then we're going to say fetch health inspection data, right? And then all we have to do is say something like services, which is this right here that we created, services, and then it says fetch health inspection data, and you're gonna see a couple errors come up, and I'm going to explain each of them to you. So let's hide this so we focus on this. So the first one is you're gonna see it says, well, async calling a function that does not support concurrency. All that's saying is, remember our services function right here. Let's jump to it. And how I'm jumping to this is I'm pressing on command, and then I'm just clicking on the function. And then you're going to see this pop up, like, where do you want to go? And then we're just going to click on it. And then if we look at our function, and you see we're inside the services class. But yeah, if we look at our function, you'll see that it says that, well, this is an asynchronous function, which used for Swift concurrency. So what that means is whatever function that's using this must also be able to handle async. And to do that, Apple made it mad easy. So For this function, all we have to do is just add another keyword, async. So now this function can handle asynchronous calls just by adding in this. Yeah, crazy. Yeah, crazy, but I love it. Now you see another error. It says again, this call basically can throw an error, because remember, again, if we look at it, command click and then click here, it is marked with throws. So whenever functions are marked with that, that means they can throw an error. Whenever you have to throw an error, a function can throw an error, you have to usually mark it with a try. You're gonna have to mark it with a try, and then more than likely put it inside a do catch, like we did before. So let's do that. So we're gonna say try. Let's add some space. We're gonna say try here, and now we have another error, a new error though, and it's saying basically this function is asynchronous, but you're not marking it with a wait like what we did before. So to do that, just add a wait here. And remember, try not to mix this up. So it's try first and then a wait. All right. Now you see this error saying that basically errors thrown from here are not handled. And to fix this, all you have to do is pretty much throw it in a do catch block. Remember, there is a catch block for this. So we're trying to do this, but if it doesn't work, what do you want to happen basically? So that's where we're going to put a do catch block. Let's just command and X and cut this for a second, and then we're going to type do, and then we're going to paste that back in here, and then we're going to say catch. And for now, in the catch block, let's just print error. Nice. So now we have one more thing. It's not an error. It's not an error, but it's a warning. It's saying the result of call to fetch health inspection data is unused. And obviously the reason why it's saying that is because remember, we made it that whenever we call this function, it's supposed to return an array of health inspections, naturally. So if we go back now, all we have to do is just make it that whatever we get from it, we put it inside a variable. Let's just do let inspections, right there, and errors are gone. So now basically this view model has this function that we can call to get health inspection data using these services, right? So, but what we want to do is basically call this function whenever our view appears, whenever our screen appears. So to do that is pretty simple, and SwiftUI makes it super simple. So you see all this stuff right here, it's kind of distracting. So I'm gonna show you again how to do this. So just close this up. So I'm gonna say command, I'm gonna go right in front of list, in front of its curly brackets. Then I'm gonna say command, option, left arrow, and that just kind of folds everything up. So it's still there. Like if I click this, it's still there. So just command, option, left arrow. Nice. So now what I want to do is make it that whenever a screen appears, we call that function in our view model. But before we can do that, we have to introduce our view model to our view, our screen, right? So to do that, all we have to do is add it as a variable, as a property on it. So we say var view model, and then we're going to say health inspection view model as a type. So introduce a view model here, and we added the health inspection model here. So this is our preview right here. You can use this if you want. Just for the sake of it, I'll fix this up. So you can just go with the quick fix. So fix health inspection services, info. Yeah, and I'm just passing in the class, but that's just for our previews. Don't worry. You can just remove this if you want, if you're not feeling it, or you can just fill it out like me. Up to you. But if you really just don't care about using the canvas, you prefer just running it, then get rid of it. Anyways, so now our view has access to our view model right here, right? So what we're gonna do is basically make it that, I remember we want to call our function as soon as the screen shows. So you might be thinking like, yo, just add an on appear, because that gets called immediately whenever the screen appears. We're not going to do that, but I'm going to show you this. So this is the unappear one that you might be thinking. We're not going to do that. There's a better one. And this one is designed specifically for pretty much Swift concurrency and asynchronous tasks. So we're just going to say task here. And then we're going to say view model. And then we're going to just call fetch health inspection data. And that's the function that we just created. And then you're going to see complaint again saying that, well, this is an asynchronous call, but you're not marking it with await. Because remember, if we command click on the function, it is asynchronous because we marked it with that asynchronous. But we didn't mark this with a throws, so that's why it's not asking for a try. You get me? So if we go back now to the screen, let's just type it in. So say await. And now the error is gone. So nice. So now what's gonna happen is what we want to do at least just for now is basically check that whenever the screen appears that we're actually seeing some data, like we're decoding it properly. So before we do that though, let's command click in here again, and then you see this is where we get our inspections, right? Let's see if we can print it to the console so that we can look at it first to make sure it's actually working. Print inspections. And I'm going to do something here. I'm going to set a breakpoint. That breakpoint is a way how you can kind of stop the code as it's running at certain points. So we'll add one there and add one here. And then I'm going to click this run button up here, and this will pretty much start our app running like alive. Now minimize it so you can see the simulator better. Oops. And you see it mentioned here that there is an error. And the reason for that is because remember, we made it that there is a view model in play now. So all we have to do is just say something like, you can just hit fix and you say update the content view to include the view model. And that's the view model that we have. Let me say right there. And pretty much what I just did for the preview earlier. And then you see that, remember, our view model requires a service. So we're just going to add that in here. So we'll say health inspection services input. And I'll just pass in the class for now. And now if I run this again, see build succeeded. All right, and now you see your app right here. So what we want is, we don't really care about this that we're seeing right here. We really care about to make sure that we're actually decoding the data that we got from the services properly. And we know we're doing this good because remember, we set breakpoints here. So if it had failed, then this catch block would have been highlighted. But you notice that it's the green, this one right here, where we're about to print the inspection. So let's just maximize this again. And then we're going to open this up because pretty much whatever we print is going to appear here. So when I move it, like I step over, you're going to notice that we see all this data, but it's really hard to read. I don't want to struggle through reading that, so I'm going to show you a better way how you can show stuff in the console. So instead of doing print here, we're going to do something called dump. And we can get rid of the breakpoint since we know that pretty much this is working right now. And then we're going to run it again. Ignore that, don't care about that. And then if we look right here, right, scroll all the way up to the top, you'll notice that we see pretty much the data that we're expecting, and it's much easier to read right now, right? So you can see like it's Kari, right? And you see the first thing. So the first thing in here was Kari King as the business. And then if we go back to our API, you see that we're getting that. And I'll minimize this for a second so you can just look at it side by side. Go here, minimize Xcode. Nice. You see, and you see the street, Allerton Avenue, the inspection date. So we're basically getting all this data from the API inside our app now. So we can start use this to do more things, mod thing. All right, so now let's just stop this. We're gonna maximize this. And obviously we don't wanna just print to the console. We wanna show this inside our app. So what we're gonna do is, let's get rid of this side. We can minimize this too. We can get rid of the dump right here, right? And one thing that we're gonna do is basically, instead of just having it go to this thing called health, to just this variable called inspections, we want to be able to use this inside our view over here. So let's go back here and we're gonna do a couple things. So what we're gonna do is first make it a health inspections view model conforms to something called observable object. And I'm going to explain this a little bit more, but basically, whenever you make it that observable, make your class or whatever you choose to make an observable object, you're basically telling SwiftUI, which is the view, that whenever certain properties change inside our view model or whatever, whenever that property changes or that value changes, I need the view to update right away with it. Basically, that's it. And how we specify what properties to listen for updates for, that whenever those change update, is we have to add something called a publish property. So we'll start by saying published, and then say in here, we'll say like health inspections. And we're gonna make it that this is a health array of health inspection models, pretty much what the data is returning. And instead of putting it inside this new variable that's kind of locked up inside this function, we're going to put it inside this array. So we're going to say health inspections, go down here, place this. And now what's basically happening is whenever we call this function again, we're going to store that data inside this property, which is a publish variable. And whenever this updates inside any SwiftUI view, the view will say, oh yeah, we got some new stuff, and the view will update so it can show that new stuff. But before, we need to do one more thing to the view to let it know that, well, this view model is an observable object that I should listen to changes for. So let's go back to content view right here. And then right here where we're doing like var view model, right? The view model is already introduced, but the view doesn't know that, like, yo, you should continue listening for certain changes. To make it know that, we have to mark it with something called an @observed object. And just by adding that, now the view knows that content view, pretty much a view of the screen, it knows that like anytime a property from this view model that is a @publish property changes, I need to update so I can show it right away. So now, basically what we can do now is, instead of just showing one thing in this inside our list, we could just pass in an array of health inspections. So let's do something like this. So we'll say this, and we'll say pass in view model, and we'll say health inspections, right? So we're telling the list that, yeah, we're passing in an array of health inspection, right? And then we have to add something else in here called inspections, inspection, and in. So this inspection in thing is basically like a way how we can access inspection that's inside our array of health inspection. So we can access each of them and do some stuff with. Now we're seeing one error here. And the first one is saying that basically health inspection. So basically health inspection requires a health inspection model conform to identifiable. So similar to how it was saying like before, we're saying, oh, a model needs to conform to decodable so we can decode it. To use this array inside our list view, we need to make it sure that the model is conforms to identifiable. So that's a quick fix. So if you remember, all we had to do is just jump to our model, right? We had to do something for decodable, but for now we have to add the identifiable protocol. And just so you know, the reason how I know that's the reason, besides doing this a bag of times, is that basically it tells us here, it says requires that health inspection model conform to identifiable. So we just hit a comma here beside decodable, and we're going to add a new protocol. And this is identifiable. And the one thing about identifiable is that it has certain requirements. So basically, whenever we're using identifiable, we have to add a property called ID. So we'll add something like let ID. And then honestly, I usually just do something like this, UUID. And then if I go to my content view and we chill for a second, you notice that the error disappears. So basically now we are able to use our view model health inspections, which is a published variable, within our list. So if I run this right now, you won't see the new data appear, but you'll notice that we see more of these, right? Before we're just seeing one, but now we're seeing more of them. And the reason for that is even though we're just seeing the same thing, same rows, we're still telling the list that the list is still going off the number of health inspections that are inside health inspections. I remember it has like 1,000 of them. So it made 1,000 of the same things. So yeah. So one thing before we get to a juicy part, one thing you might have noticed is this warning here. It says publishing changes from background thread is not allowed. And it says make sure that make sure you publish the changes from the main thread. The reason why this is happening is pretty much inside our view model right here, right? Remember, this call that we make is asynchronous, but we're updating this value and we're updating the UI. And I'm not sure, just in case you don't know, you might have known already, any UI changes or view changes that we make should always be done on the main thread. So a quick fix for this is to just simply, on top of our function that's doing it, just add main actor right here. And then if we run this again, and we scroll a bit, just scroll, you'll notice that we're not seeing that warning anymore. All right, but we're still seeing the same, the same data. It's just more of them. So if we want to fix it and make sure that we see the information for each inspection, what we're gonna do is two things. So if we go back to our content view, right? And let's get rid of this right here. And we go back to our content view, you can see that, and I open this up, you can see that we're just passing in, we're just hard coding it. We're just saying name of business, address of business, yada, yada, yada. We don't want to do it like that. We want to actually pass in the information for each inspection. So what we could do here is where we have name of business, basically remember that's the DBA parameter on our model. So that's this DBA. You can just ignore this warning. It's not too serious. And then we'll just say inspection. Let's just delete that part that says name of business, and I'll say inspection DBA, the name of the business. And then the part where we have address of business, let's get rid of that. I will say inspection. I think that was just street. So that's looking good. And now we see this other part where we had the type of food or type of restaurant. We'll just get rid of that. I won't say inspection. That I think it's cuisine description. Yeah. So well, remember, cuisine description is an optional variable. So it might have a value, it might not. So I'm going to show you a lazy way first, and then I'm going to show you the proper way to handle this. So the lazy way is to just be like, double question sign. And then so if it doesn't have a value, just put an empty string. And I'm going to explain why this is kind of the lazy way to do this. And then the next one right here is, we said it's the actual violation, right? So we're going to go in here, and then we're just going to say inspection. And then I'll say dot. And then we just go to violation description. And again, this is an optional value. So we'll go with question sign. And then say if it doesn't have a value, just put out pretty much those empty string. And now we have this one right here, which is the date, right? So now we could just do the same thing. I'll explain this more when once you see it. So we'll say inspection dot inspection date, and we have this as an optional, but I don't think we need to make this optional. So let's just go back to models and we'll get rid of that question sign. Let's just go back here. So now what we're going to do is just pretty much just run this. Let's just see what it looks like. So we will do that. And now you'll see that we see different information. It doesn't look the best, I know, but it's different information. So we're getting somewhere, right? And you'll notice that, remember, we're supposed to see the cuisine here, but we're not seeing it. So let's see if we can make this look a little bit better first. And one way how we can do, before we make it prettify it or whatever you want to call it, a clean way and a recommended way whenever we're doing like the rows inside a list is to try and put the row, so all this stuff inside this VStack, so remember Command Option left to close up the brackets, put all this stuff inside a separate view. So it's just Command Exit, and then we're going to open up this side over here, go over here, and then I'm going to create one more new folder, and I'm going to call this Health Inspection Row View, right? And then add a new file in here, and then I'll just call this same thing, Health Inspection Row View. Nice. Inside here, I'll say struct, call it Health Inspection Row View. Make sure that it conforms to a view. And then inside here, I'll do like body, some view. And then I'll just paste back what we had before, what we copied from the previous screen. And oh yeah, forgot to import SwiftUI. So let's go up here and then just import SwiftUI. That will get rid of some of those errors. But no, you see an error. It says, yo, I don't know, cannot find inspection. It doesn't know what inspection is. But remember, we knew what it was because we were pretty much passing it in here. So to fix this is really easy. All we have to do is go back up to where our struct is. We're going to add a new parameter for our health inspection row view. And this is just going to literally be let inspection. And it's going to be the, the health inspection model. Health inspection model. And now you'll notice that all those errors are gone. So now all we have to do is jump back to our main view, and then inside our list where it's expecting a row, we're just going to call health inspection row view, and then we're going to pass in inspection. And now you see how clean this is. It's not like a whole bunch of stuff. And if I run this, you'll notice that it looks same thing. Same thing. Cool. All right. So before I dismiss the simulator, let's see if we can make this simulator look a little bit more lively. So we're going to go to our health inspection row view now. Let's dismiss that part. And one thing I'm thinking is, right off the bat, I want the business name to pop. I want to look at this and know what business is happening, like what business is inspection for. So we're going to go to that text, which is right here, text inspection DBA. Let's get some space. And then I'm gonna change the font. I'm actually gonna make this a title 3 maybe. And then I'm gonna add some type of font weight, and I'm gonna make it bold. And we're gonna change up some more stuff, but let's just look at what this looks like first. Let's run it. And you see right off the bat, you see the name of the business pops a lot more. So that's looking a little bit better. But one thing you might have noted, might not have noticed, is that we're not able to see like the type of business, whether it's American, Japanese, Jamaican, whatever. If we scroll down here, you notice that we're just not seeing it. And part of the reason for that is because remember when I was saying that the API uses like snake case. So you see our cuisine description here is like underscore description, and we're using camel case. We have to fix this, we have to do two things. So the first thing we have to do is pretty much jump back. Let's maximize this. Now we're going to jump back to our services, right? And then you see where we have our JSON decoder here. We're going to specify that there's a way how we can specify that, like, yo, if we see a snake case, convert it to our camel case. So to do that, we're just going to say JSON decoder, we already have, and then we're going to say key decoding strategy, and then we're going to specify that it says convert from snake case. So it kind of tells you what it does. And if we run this again, we're going to see one error, but I'll explain to you why that's happening. So we run this, you see we get an error here that says data couldn't be read or because it is missing. So why this is happening is because if we jump to our model and you say because it is missing, it's more than likely because this date value that we have here might be a case where there are some properties, some records that don't have an inspection date. Not this way. Let's just change this back to date right here. Then let's minimize this. And we're going to see one error might pop up somewhere in our health inspection row. You see right here where we were saying that this will always be there. We just have to jump to our health inspection row view. Let's just do that and then let's add this in. And now it's handling it as an optional, the lazy way. This one, let's change this to date. All right, now if we run this again, you'll notice that we don't see that error anymore and we actually see some data here. So this is looking pretty good. Also, you might have noticed that we now can see the cuisine type, whether it's Chinese or Japanese, to the right, which we weren't seeing before. So one thing I'm thinking is, let's add like some type of like background around this, like just some type of color, so I can see that kind of pops more what kind of business it is. Let's just move up here, the cuisine description, and then we're gonna say add background here and rerun. And then you notice that right beside the cuisine, so you see Indian, it has this bluish background. But it's a squared. I don't like how that looks, and it's like sucked onto it. So what we're gonna do is add some padding. So we're just gonna add like dot padding, and let's just make this 5. And as I said, I want it kind of rounded. So there's a bunch of ways how you can do this. I'll go with the more modern one. So I'll say clip shape, and I'll type in rounded rectangle. I'll put this here and I'll give it a corner radius of 4. And now when I run this, you're gonna see that the cuisine has a the cuisine type has this rounded-ish background. It looks much more, neater, much more beautiful. But one thing you might notice is these values, these records that don't have a cuisine description, have this ugly blob just right there. And the reason for that is because, remember, we're saying even if this value doesn't exist, still just do an empty string. So this is the empty string. And that is why I was saying that's the lazy way. So let me show you a better way to handle this. So inside our view, we're going to do something like if let, we're going to say cuisine description. Autocomplete kind of helps with that. I'll type it out. And I'll say inspection.cuisine. Open that up. And then I'm going to put this inside here. And then instead of using this as our text, I'm just going to use cuisine description. So what this is doing is saying, if there is actually a value for cuisine description, then show this text, right? So if I run this, you'll notice that we don't see any more of those empty blue blobs anymore. See? Nothing right here. We only see it where it's actually present. One thing I feel like we could do too is, because the text is black here, it's kind of hard to see. So we could now make this white so it's a little bit more clearer to see. And we could give it some boldness. So let's jump back to it. We're just going to hit here and we're going to say foreground style. And let's just type in white. And let's just give it some font weight. And let's make it semi-bold. And if we run it again, you'll see that now it kind of pops more and the background is white. That's looking a bit more better, right? So now remember how I showed you that basically if the value isn't there, we could just do a if let to just show it. If it's there, if not, don't show it. So one thing we could do is do it for the other one too. So violation description, I think we could do it for this one too. So let's just handle that real quick. So we'll say again, if let's maximize so you can see way better. We'll say violation, and let's just go with autocomplete since you get the point now. And then we'll cut that. And then we'll use violation description here. And just plop this right here. So this is looking much better. Nice. So now we can kind of leave date. Date isn't a huge one, so you can just leave that for now. And now our view is looking a little bit better. So we can run it again. It's not gonna look that different. We can run it again. And now this is looking, kind of neat. One thing I'm noticing though, you see how much text is here for this description? That's a lot to show on the front page. And you might have somewhere it's like a bunch. You see how this is like 4 lines? Let's see if we can limit those lines. So let's minimize that. And then we're going to scroll down to where we have violation description, which is the text that's showing that. We're going to change this to be add a line limit modifier and just set the line limit to 2 lines. And if we run this again, we look at it, you notice that the descriptions are no longer super long. We're just seeing the max 2 lines or so, right? That's looking much better. Now, the only part that I feel like we really need to handle right now is the date. There's no way I can just look at this and know what date this is happening. So I'm going to show you a super easy way how to fix this formatting thing for the date. So let's just maximize this for a second. We're going to jump back to our services. A lot of the work, we're just doing this from services, like handling the decoding and all of that. So to do this now, right below where we were handling for snake case, we're going to go here. We're going to say something like JSON decoder dot date decoding strategy. And we're going to say equal date formatted, right? And now this is requesting that we use some type of date formatter. So let's add that in real quick. So let's add something like let date formatter equal date formatter, right? And then we have to put the format that the date is gonna come from the API. So we'll say date formatter, that date format, we'll say equal, and to find out the format that the date is gonna come back from the API, let's just look at the API. So let's jump here. And if we look at the API, you'll see that this is the format that the date comes in. So let's just copy one as like a reference. And we'll jump back to Xcode. And pretty much here where it's asking for the date format, let's just paste this here for now. So a quick way to do this is basically for the year, just replace each number with Y, which is representing the year. So we'll just say Y. And then for the month, we're going to replace this with MM. And then for the day, oops, be careful, we're going to represent this with DD. And now you see this T part here, be careful. So instead of just changing this, we're going to just put like this right here. All right. And now this portion here is like the time. So naturally, this over here would be the hours, so HH. And then for this, we'll say MM. And now for the seconds, we'll say SS. And then for the super small seconds, that's what I call it, you say SS there. And then right now, you see the part where we left off. Now we can go back to this, where we're adding in the date decoding strategy. And we're going to put the date formatter inside of here. But now the date formatter is saying like, yo, whenever you come across a date, use this date formatter to help decode it and transform it to a date that we can read better. So if we just run this now, it's not gonna really work. So I'll run it now just to show you. And you see, we still see this date here, this weird thing that we can't read. To make this really work, what we have to do is let's minimize this portion. We're gonna go back to our model right here. And you can see that inspection date is actually still an array, is still a string, an optional string. So we're gonna replace this with a date type, right? And now inside our, where are you? Health inspection row view, you're gonna see this complaining. It's like, yo, this is not a string. So get rid of this portion here. Scroll up and get rid of that optional portion. And remember, now this is a date type. It's not a string anymore. So if I option click on it, you see date type. And then I'm going to type in here style, and then I'm going to say date. So we added the comma, and then we added a different parameter called style, and say that it's a date. And now if we run this, you're going to notice that now we see a much more readable date right here. So January 1st, 1900. And you see it's like 2022. So it's like kind of mixed up how the date is being handled, how the sorting is being handled, sorry. So, but like the date is much more readable now. So you can just look at it and know when this happened. So to fix it and make sure that the sorting is like always in order, what we can do, I'll show you first in the browser. So if we go to the browser and you see, even in the browser, the dates are kind of messed up, not in any real sorting order. What we can do is go here, and then I'm going to say question sign, and then I'm going to say dollar, and I'm going to type in order, right? The order is like a keyword that you can be like, yo, whenever you put this in, the API would know that, oh, you want to sort by a specific parameter, any of these. So I can put any one of these. And to select the type of parameter that you want to sort for, you just click equal first. And then in our case, it makes sense to sort by the inspection date, right? So let's go here. We're going to say inspection date. But the problem with this is if I just hit this again, you'll notice that it pretty much didn't sort by the most recent, which is more than likely what you want. So to make it nice sorts by the most recent, we have to add another value. So we'll say plus, and we'll say DSC, which is sorting by descending order. And if we run this again, you'll notice that the most recent thing is something that happened on March 3rd, which is like really current at this time. So basically all we have to do is update our endpoint or URL that we're using inside our app. So similar way. So let's minimize this, and then we're going to jump to our services here, and let's scroll up, and I'm going to show you a much cleaner way to do this after, but I just want you to get the concept right now. So remember, we have to add question sign, and then we're going to say, how do we want to handle this? We want to order, we want to use that keyword ability, and we want to do it by inspection date, right? And then we want to sort it by descending order. So you say like plus, and you say DSC. Now, if I run this, you'll notice that the most recent thing that we see is March 3rd, 2025. So it is now sorted by the inspection dates. A lot on March 3rd, so it's going to take a while for me to find, probably a second. So, but you get the idea. It's now sorted in descending order based on the inspection date. A lot of them. I'm not gonna waste too much time just to keep doing it, but you get the idea. So that's one thing. So now the view is looking much better. But one thing that can happen, and happen anytime, is that we could have an error. So I have to show you error, how to handle our errors. And also one thing that you might have noticed is that whenever we click this and we start calling the API, we have that quick blank screen. And that's because, you know, we are fetching the data. We haven't gotten the data yet. So a good way to handle things where it's like you're waiting for something to happen is to add spinner. So show you how you can do that. So now let's go here. Let's go to our health inspection view model, right? And then inside here, we're going to add another parameter. And this is going to be at publish. I'm going to say var is loading. Boolean, and we're going to set this to false at first. And you have to think about it. When do we want to show the spinner? We basically want to show this whenever, right before we call the API, we want to show it, or while we're getting the data. But as soon as we get the data, we want to hide it. We don't want to. It doesn't make sense to show the spinner when we already have the data. You get me? All right. So all we have to do right now is say is loading. So inside here, right before we call the API, so we set this to true. And then after we get that data, we could just set is loading is equal to false. Because once we get the data, we don't need to show the spinner. And also one thing to remember, in the catch block, you want to make sure that you set is loading to false too. But you don't want to have a scenario where an error occurred and you just have a spinner stuck on the screen. I've seen that happen in a ton of apps. You don't want that experience. So now our view model has this publish variable that we can use to kind of show a spinner in the view. So it's not going to work just yet. We have to make an additional change. So we'll go to content view. And then inside content view here, right, we're going to add a new modifier. So we're going to say something like, just add it below task. So I'll say dot overlay. And then inside that overlay, I'll say if view model that is loading is true, then show this progress view, which is the spinner. And then you could just specify what you want the spinner to say. So I'll just go with loading. And now as long as is loading is true, which only becomes true, remember, whenever we are about to get the data. So, right? So if I minimize this and then I run again, if you watch real quick, right, you notice you see that quick spinner right there. I'll do it one more time so you can see it a little bit. If data kind of comes in fast, you see the spinner. Nice. But one thing about this one is that the spinner, I feel like, is just kind of too small. If you want to fix that, what you could do is add a modifier to our control or to our progress view and say something like control size and make this be extra large. And now if we run it again, you'll see a slightly bigger spinner. You see that? Cool. So now we're handling, so now the user knows basically when the data is being fetched, they're not just left in limbo. They know something is happening. You get me? So yeah, that's good. So now the next part that we're gonna do is basically handle if we get an error. So to do this, what we're gonna say is let's maximize again. We're gonna jump to our health inspection view model. I know we're in the view model a lot, but that's where you should be. You don't want this logic happening in the view and over here and over here. You want it kind of concise in one place or isolated. So yeah, so we're gonna add a couple new properties to here. So we'll say add publish again, and then we're gonna say show error alert. I'm gonna make this a Boolean too. And then we're gonna add one more that is publish var error message. We're gonna make this a string, right? And then obviously, because the only time we'd want to show an error alert is when we fail to get the data. I remember, because it's a try, whenever we fail to get that data, we're gonna hit the catch block. So let's go down here. And we'll leave this for now. This is fine because we still want to hide the spinner in any case. And then inside here, what we want to do is say like error message. And for now, let's do something like something went wrong, right? And then we'll do something like show error alert, and we'll toggle it so it becomes true. So the error message we want to show is just a basic one that says something went wrong. And then we're going to show something that says show error alert, and then just toggle that. So if we jump back to our content view right here, right, we're gonna add one more modifier, right? One more. So we'll go here, I will say dot alert, and I like this one. It's an older one, but I love this one. So we'll hit alert right here, right? And you're gonna see it asks for a binding. Now, show error alert, if we go back to our view model, is a publish show error alert. This one right here is a publish variable. If we want to use it like a binding, all we have to do is add something like $sign in front of it first. We're going to say view model, and then we'll say show error alert, right? And then in here, in this part, you just start by typing in alert, and then just go to the first one, and then use a text. And then remember, we have a view model error message. That's where that something went wrong. So it's a error message right here. So now, whenever this show error alert is true, we're gonna see an alert pop up, and it's gonna have a error message in it. Right now, it's just gonna say something went wrong. Nice. So if we jump back here, if we run the app naturally, nothing bad is happening. So we're not gonna see that alert. So we have to kind of force the app to fail to pretend like an error occurred. So what we're gonna do is basically go over to our services right here, and let's just replace something in here. I'm just gonna replace data, and then if we run this, API is messed up, so it's not gonna work. You're gonna notice that we see the error pop up that says something went wrong. Cool. And then if we click OK, you see we just see this plain blank screen. Bad experience, you know, because you don't know what the user doesn't know what to do after this. You know what I mean? They can't refresh it. They don't have like a description that tells them what is the issue. None of that. So what we're gonna do is fix this. So what we can do for now is inside our inside our content view, right? We're gonna go to where we have our list, and let's just cut it for 1 second. So let's just command X, don't get rid of it. Command X. We're gonna say if view model dot health inspections is not empty, then we show the expected list. Like if we have health inspections, show them in the list. But if we don't have any health inspections, let's give them some type of view to let them know something went wrong. So we'll say something like content unavailable view. And I love this view. I'm glad Apple gave this to us. So because it's so convenient. And if you look in the App Store or some Apple apps, you'll see that they even use it too. So we'll say something like no health inspections found, right? And then for system image, let's add like a magnifying glass, right? So now if we run this again, and then say we got the error alert, but now the user knows that, well, no health inspections found. So just like a quick scenario to let them know something went wrong. So the next thing that we're gonna do is see if we can give like more meaningful error messages. So to do that, all we have to do, right, is go to, so we're gonna still leave our endpoint kind of messed up because we're gonna keep causing errors to happen. So all we have to do is go to our health inspection services, and then inside here, we're gonna add, inside our enum health inspection services error, we're gonna add a new property to this. So we're gonna say something like var error message string, and then we're gonna switch on self, which are all these cases, and we're gonna put like what you would want the error message to be, or say a URL error, HTTP URL error, or whatever. So for me, I'm gonna just keep it simple. When you're making your app, make it more readable, more user friendly. But for me, I'm gonna say URL error. And then for this one, I'll just say HTTP URL error. HTTP error. Same thing here. I'll say like, yeah, just code error. And then for this one, I'll say, and I'll say something went wrong. Let's just say unknown error. And then we'll use the error that we get from them, from the system. So now what's gonna happen is you have to make one additional change. So if we go here, you'll see that right now we're still just doing error message that something went wrong. To make it that we can use our custom errors, we have to basically transform it. So let's just cut this for a second. And then we're going to say something like if let custom error, which is our error. And then we're going to say error. Remember, we get, as long as you're in a catch block, you'll get an error variable. And we're going to try to convert that error variable to our type of error, the health inspection service error, right? And you know what? I'm going to give it the same name so it's easier for you to follow too. So we're converting regular error to our health inspection service error. Now remember, we added a new variable to this error message that has a string readable error message that's linked to each error case. So if we go back here and then we paste the stuff, well, I guess I removed that, but anyways, we can add it back. So we'll say error message is equal to health inspection service error, which is ours. We're gonna make it that it's the error message, and if you command click on it, you'll see it pushes us our thing, so we know that's good. And now after this, we're gonna say something like show error alert that toggle. So now we will be able to see a more meaningful, more relatable error message that we are used to. So let's minus that, and if we run, you'll see we see it says unknown error. A server with the specified host name could not be found. And if we go to our thing, you see that for the unknown case right here, right? You see it says unknown error, and then I'm passing in the error message that we got. And if you don't remember how we got this, if we scroll down all the way down here, you see that we use the health service error, and we said unknown error, and then whatever the error message parameter that we needed, we passed in error.localized description. So that's how we got this extra set of information right there. So now we have more meaningful error messages in our code. So now if we jump back to services, we can fix this by saying, fix back our endpoint by just saying data rack right here. And if we rerun this, we'll be able to see our data. But just remember, now our code can handle for different errors that might occur. So yeah, look good, you know. So the next thing we want to do, right, is I want to make it that whenever the user say pulls right here, they basically can refresh the data. And you see it all the time. You see it on a bunch of different apps where it's like you pull to refresh or something like that. So to do that is actually really easy. So if we go to content view again, right? And then inside this list right here, inside the VStack, we're going to add another modifier. So it's a lot of modifiers in SwiftUI, but trust me, it's so much more easier doing it in SwiftUI versus UIKit. I don't even want to talk about UIKit. Anyways, so we're going to right below, let's add it under tasks, since this will be really similar to tasks. I will start by saying refreshable. Refreshable, right? And basically refreshable is what do you want to happen whenever we pull that thing. And just by adding this in, so I won't add in the logic yet, but I'll just add in this modifier. And then if I run this, you see that we automatically get this thing where it kind of spins. You see that, the spinner at the top? I pull to refresh, but nothing's going to happen. So what we basically want to happen is we want to call the API again. So all we have to do is just copy the logic that we had in task and then just paste this in refreshable too. So if I run it again and I pull to refresh, you see we momentarily see that loading spinner because we recalled the API and we re-updated the data. We got some new data and we did all that work. So right now we have a really good app where basically we can see the most recent health inspections of a restaurant in New York City. We can easily see the date that these happened and a ton more information. The date, the type of violation, and much more. So I'm going to pause it here for right now. But in the next video, what I'm going to show you is how we can actually basically click on each row and pretty much go to a bigger screen, and we can see more detail about that health inspection. We might end up adding in some more parameters from here. So we might add in building, we might add in zip code, we might add in phone, just more information that we might want to use, or maybe a critical flag. And that would involve us updating our model and definitely the score or the grade. So that's the next step that we're gonna do. And so navigating to a better screen to show more detail. And then after that, I'm gonna show you how we can add in unit tests. And you might be complaining like, yo, you don't want to do unit tests, but as a developer, you really need to learn how to test your code. So we will be doing some unit tests, and I'll break it down so you can follow. I'm gonna keep it real so we can talk easily as we do it. And after that, once we're done with the unit test, we're going to move to another portion which would involve accessibility. And accessibility is like basically how you can make it that your app is able to be used by more users. So people that might be visually impaired or hearing impaired, there are certain features that we can add in our app to make it that even they have a good experience. So that's looking really good. So before we do that though, so look out for that in the next 2 episodes. So a couple more coming up, and they'll be way shorter than this, so don't worry, since they'll be more focused. So before I go, I'm gonna give you one more bonus treat. So right now, I don't like how this list looks. So I'm gonna give you a nice bonus treat on how we can make our list look even. So let's maximize again. And then inside our content view, right? You see where we have our list right here? Let's add some space around this and move this. We're gonna change the style of list that we're doing. So we'll say a list style, and I'll set this to plain. And now I'll minimize this and I'll run it again. And now you see the list is more plain. It's still a bit hard to read though, but the bonus is coming, trust me. All right, so now this is what we're gonna do. So if we go to basically our health inspection row view, right? You see all this beautiful code that we just wrote. I'm gonna, remember, command option, left click, and basically we're gonna command X and cut this for 1 second. So we cut it. Yeah, so we cut this, and then we're gonna say something like group box. And I love this view, bro. Like, it makes things just so easy. And then we're just gonna paste back with command V the view that we had. I remember all we did, we just put all this stuff inside a group box. And if we run this, you're gonna see how different the UI looks with just that alone. Okay, so you see now it's even much easier to read. You can kind of just look at it and know what's happening. You know that this is about this restaurant. You can know that this is about this restaurant much easier. But one thing you might be seeing is this extra line between each of them. If you want to get rid of that, which I want to get rid of that, is we're just going to maximize this. We're going to jump back to our content view, right? And then right where we have each of our rows right here, you're going to add something called that list row separator. We're going to set this to hidden, and make sure you add this to the row, right? The row for this, not the list itself. But that's definitely reached me where I was trying to add it to the list and it didn't work. So make sure that you add it to the row itself. And now let's minimize it and run. And now you notice we don't see that extra nasty line right there. So now our view is looking even more better, much cleaner and easier to follow. So that was the extra bonus I gave you. So if you stuck around, that's the bonus. Your app is looking even much more better. And again, remember, in the next videos, expect how to learn how to navigate to another screen, a detailed screen with more information. And then after that, we're going to be doing, in the follow-up video, unit tests. And then after we're done with unit tests, we're going to be looking into some accessibility to make sure that our app can be used by visually impaired people, hearing impaired, just a wider, more range of users. I want to get more users in your app, right? Yeah. Now, again, one, you did a great job if you stuck out through this video. If you like this, just like, comment, share, and let me know what you think. And a motto I'm gonna leave you with before I go is, remember this, and this is my motto: anyone can learn anything with time, practice, and failures. All right, I'm out.